Hello, welcome back to my channel. We're here with a car video today, and I think my next few videos might be car videos. I apologize in advance, but I have a good reason. My brother and his family bought a house, and they are in the process of closing, but the closing date was pushed back. So they are getting kicked out of the house that they live in. It's already been rented with no place to go. So they're moving in for a couple weeks with the kids. They have 3 kids and a feisty, beautiful, adorable little 4-year-old that I will not have a moment of silence in my house, even trying to film. So bear with me in the car videos, but I got a really good question that I wanted to make a response to right away. And I got it on a video, and this amazing subscriber asked,
Well, Ro, the visiting rooms I've seen on TV and also in movies are carried out in an episode of Blue Bloods. The visiting room was a big open room with chairs connected to tables and COs all around the room, and an Alcatraz starring Clint Eastwood. When they had a visitor, the inmate would be on one side of the glass divider and the visitor would be on the other side, and they would communicate via phone. So I think visiting rooms in prison would be like that episode of Blue Bloods, with a wide open area, but with all the COs all around.
I love that. And ready for a little known fact, Adam was locked up with Clint Eastwood's nephew in Allenwood. Yep, I kept in touch with him for a little bit, but then we lost touch. It happens a lot, no big deal. I think that your perception and what you've seen in movies and on TV is pretty similar to a lot of the visit rooms that are out there. I think they do a decent job on movies of depicting in jail and inside of visiting rooms in a lot of movies. In some of the dramatizations that are supposed to be funny or not necessarily real, they can be a little strange, but the ones that you saw are very similar. So every visit room is going to be different depending on the level of security they're at, depending on if it's jail or prison, depending on just the way the facility wants to run visit, where they are. So I will tell you my experience and the visit rooms that I've seen. I've seen a whole bunch of different visiting rooms. I've been to a county jail, I've been to a military prison, and then I've been to a couple of federal institutions, both high security and medium security. I've never been to a low security facility, I've never been to a camp, and I've never been to a state prison. So anybody that has experience with any visit rooms that I haven't mentioned, or anything that you've seen that's different from what I've seen, please feel free to comment below. Or if you've seen movies that depict prison visiting rooms in a way that is absolutely untrue, let me know in the comments below, and I could always do a debunking video of those too. So in the military prison, I talked about this visit room and how you got in very specifically in my jail versus prison video that I created last spring, I believe. I will post a link up there down below. When I got to the military prison, that's the first time I was ever visiting a prison. It was my college boyfriend's very good friend. And it was called the Brig. That's what they called the Marine prison where he was being held. I think he got a 10-year sentence. And I think he did the whole thing there. I don't know why they would do a sentence that is at that facility versus being transferred to a federal prison, because I have one friend that was in the Marines, one that was in the Army when they caught their cases, and they're both in federal prisons. So if anybody knows that, comment below. If not, I could ask Adam or my friend whose husband was in the Army. So this facility I went to, I don't really remember much about a dress code. I just dressed the way that I always dressed. I don't remember anything about a wire-free bra or anything like that. So I guess it wasn't anything traumatic, or I didn't have to change because I didn't have any trouble. So you walked in, I guess you filled out paperwork. This is so long ago, I don't remember. But what I vividly remember is there was this big lobby. This, by the way, the facility was on the military base. We were all forced into this little foyer type of room where there were bars in front of us. Think of like the size of an elevator, like a freight elevator. There were bars in front of us. There were bars behind us. So we were all smushed into this little freight looking elevator, but just kind of a passageway type of room. The bars had to lock behind us before. So it was like close, beep, lock, before the control room would open the bars in front of us. And then those bars in front of us opened into this enormous looking cafeteria. And the tables were set up just like you would think cafeteria tables. I'm sure this was the cafeteria. And there were just long rows of tables, think like high school tables with but long tables where everybody was sitting all the way across the room, very similar to what you see in movies where they're showing a chow hall or a dining hall for where the inmates eat. That's what this, to me, I've never seen that, but that's what this looked like to me. And we sat in our chairs, we sat across from the inmate, and I just remember it being this enormous room. And when he left, when he came in and when he left, the inmate, he came in and left out of this back corner. And I just remember that hallway. That hallway was so specific to me. And that's really all I remember, just a huge room and being smushed into this thing with bars. And I remember it just felt very dark, very sad. But it was my first time in a prison. It's going to be dark and sad. So the next prison visit I went to was with one of my good friends who was going to visit her boyfriend in Essex County Jail. And it was weird because Essex County Prison is in Newark, New Jersey, and that's a very urban area. But you drove all the way to the back of Newark, and you went down this long road. You went down through the Portuguese section of Newark, which is all restaurants and bars and shops and everything like that. It's like hopping and it's going. And then at the end of that, right before you get to the highway, there's this long stretch of industrial. So you go down this long industrial road, and the parking lot I remember being huge. And there was this front building that was the county jail, and then there was this back building that was part of the county jail, but it was called something else. This back building was for people who were there for drugs, like drugs and alcohol, like rehab type of stuff. But it was still part of Essex County, because in New Jersey, I think it's the third DUI and after is automatic mandatory 6 months jail time. In this county facility, you walk into this huge, it kind of reminded me of like a municipal building. And all the chairs were from the back facing the front. Now this isn't the visit room. This is where you got processed. And there was a big desk behind glass where the employees that were processing people in to visit the cops, the COs that were working. I always say cops. They're not really cops. They're COs. That's just what we call them in the feds, or cops. So where the correctional officers were working and processing people in, and they were behind glass, and to the right of the room was all cubbies, not lockers, cubbies, where you just left your stuff. You just had to trust and believe that it would be there when you came back. So your car keys went in there, your belt went in there, anything that was in your pockets, anything that wouldn't make it into the room. So you did go through a metal detector, you went into an elevator, and that elevator brought you up to, it kind of reminded me of a school, like a big, huge waiting room that looked very much like a school. And you sat in these, it was kind of like waiting at the airport, just these rows and rows and rows of chairs, and it felt like an eternity. You weren't allowed to have your cell phone, so we didn't know what time it was. We didn't know how long it was. So we waited and we waited and we waited, and we finally were called. And they took us down a hallway with rooms, doors for rooms. It looked very, very similar to a high school to me. So when finally we were brought to the room that we were visiting him in, it was similar to what you were saying with the glass partition and the phone on the wall, but it wasn't a line of them. It wasn't cubbies. This was our own little room. And we were on one side of the glass, and I remember there was a ledge, but there was nothing to sit on. Maybe there was. I don't remember. I kind of remember like leaning on something. There was a phone on the wall. No phone on the wall. There was a vent on the wall, a metal strip that had a bunch of little holes. I think like one of those boards that you put the pegs in, a peg board, but they were very, 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 very small. And it went all the way down the wall. And when he came out, he came into the other side of the glass, and we could see, we were a couple of levels up, so we could look down. And what we were looking down onto was the rec room in the county jail. So we could see all of the inmates there in their chairs, watching TV, kind of in the day room, like looking up towards the guys in visit. They couldn't interact with each other because her boyfriend was in this closed room, but we could just see down because everything is glass, plexiglass. And it was really, really hard to hear him, and it was hard for him to hear us. And we just had to kind of put our mouths up to that vent and yell into it, and then put your ear up to it when he was yelling back. And all I could think about was, oh my goodness, the germs that must be on those vents. Ugh, I kind of got the heebie-jeebies. But to watch them interact with each other and how they both lit up when they saw each other, even though it was behind glass, even though they had no contact and couldn't touch each other, it was just beautiful. And my friend and I always joked about like the hand sliding down the glass thing. That was always our joke. Like, oh, it was so sweet. And this was before he got locked up. Like, they were like the couple that was like this down the glass. And then I don't think they did that down the glass because imagine touching the germs on that glass. But that was at the county facility. Oh, and this is kind of interesting. In county, he was a bodybuilder on the street. He was huge. He was an enormous guy. Huge back, lots of lats, and he was always tan. So I remember when I saw him, he had lost 60 pounds. He was skinny, and he was pale because he was locked up in the county for a year by the time we found him and saw him. He was Casper White. It was kind of sad. It was scary to look at because he looked very sick. Because when you're in county, you don't get rec outside. So that was that experience. And then again, just to leave, we couldn't really see. He just walked out of that room. We couldn't see anything further than that. We couldn't see him go back downstairs or anything like that. And they made us get out of there pretty quick. Walked down that hallway, went down the elevator, back into that big waiting room area that looked just very like a municipal building. And then we got our stuff out of the cubbies. Everything was there. We locked our purses and our belongings in the trunk of her car, but anything that we had there, like change in our pockets or belts or anything, everything was still there. Went back to the car and we left. The next institution that I went to was to go visit Adam, and it was at a federal penitentiary. It was at a federal prison, highest security level you could get. This was a federal complex. So there were different levels of security. There were all different buildings there. So you had to drive up to the facility itself, and there was a control room. So anybody that's driven onto a military base, very similar, kind of like a toll booth, but a control booth where you had to pull up to. You had to lower your window. They asked what you were there for. You said visit. They asked who you were there to see. You showed them your valid ID. And then when you were approved, you got a slip that you had to put in your window. Like when you valet your car, you had to put a slip in your window that proved that you were allowed to be on the property. And then once all of that was done, it didn't take very long, a minute or two. It's not like they didn't run your license or anything like that. But they opened that gate just like at a toll booth, and you were allowed to drive onto the property. And then we drove up to the building, and the parking lot was set up a little bit. And I think I said this in an older video, but back at the time, I was so healthy, smoking tons of cigarettes. We would smoke cigarettes in the parking lot right before we went in, because at a high security level, there are walls inside of the fences. So there's a fence, but there's also a wall, so the inmates can't see out into the parking lot. They can't see anything beyond the wall. That's why a lot of times when you hear people referring to prison, they call it behind the wall. There's literally a wall there. So we thought, well, they can't see us, so we're going to smoke one last cigarette before we go in, because Adam's Mr. Health and her boyfriend was Mr. Bodybuilder. They didn't know that we smoked. Well, so we thought. You don't think we smelled like ashtrays going in there? Smoked cigarettes the whole way there, smoked on the way, like ridiculous. Anyway, probably didn't even chew any gum because you weren't allowed to. In there, it was, again, very institutional. It was very clean. I remember you walked into the building, and it was a newer as far as not from like the 1950s, 60s. It was built in probably 90s, 2000s, something like that. And when you walked in, the front desk was almost immediately in front of you, and there was a little waiting area to your left, and that's where you filled out your paperwork, and then you brought it up to the cops. I can't remember, was there plexiglass there too? I'm not sure, but I think you did. I think you slid it under to the cops, and there was a waiting area, and then there was a little table type of thing where you filled out your paperwork, and behind you were lockers. So we would always wear things like sneakers, flip-flops in the summer, or Ugg boots in the winter, and we would lock all of that and our belongings, and you had to leave your coat because you didn't go outside of the facility once you were in. So you had to leave your coat and lock everything in that locker, and then take that key from the locker and put that in your bag. You weren't allowed to take your own keys in. You had to take the key from the locker. The lockers there were free, by the way. So then towards the right of you, when you walk in the door, is the metal detector. There's a scanner where you put your belongings and take off your shoes and everything, your belt, you pass that through. And then once you're on the other side and approved, you could put that all back on. And then you wait in a little waiting area there. There were chairs and everything. And once everybody's processed through, they had to call the control room. You could see it all behind you. You could see all of that was all glass. You could see all the controls and everything. Kind of cool looking. And then once they called that back, you could hear bzzz, and the unlocking of the door. then that would unlock the door. It was bars on this, electronic bars. So they would slide back. We'd all go into this bigger foyer than the military prison, but it was like this hallway type of room. And then it kind of curved around, and there were bars in front of you. And same thing, you could see into the control room, and they would have to call that in, that second door. And then you could hear click, buzz, and they would open that door, let it slide open. And then I just remember this long hallway. It almost seemed never ending. I was always wearing heels that were really high because jurors. And I remember a lot of the times I would have to scale the wall while we were walking because those hallways were always freshly waxed. Everything there was pristinely clean, but scary when you're wearing heels on a freshly waxed floor. So went down this long hallway, and then they opened the door. I don't recall if that had to be buzzed open. I don't think so, but opened the door, and then to the left was an elevator for handicapped people, and then to the right was a pretty steep set of stairs. And then you go up the stairs. I can't remember if you had to get buzzed into that room or wait for the cop to unlock it. I don't remember if it was electronic or not, but you had to wait to be let into that room. And the cop's desk was set up, and it was a semicircle desk. I'm short, but I always wore heels. It was really hard to interact with those cops because that desk was set so high. So there, you had to give them your ID. You had to give them your ID, and then they would tell you where to sit. And it was this enormous atrium type of room. It was actually a gorgeous room. Unfortunately, it was a prison visiting room, but it was a gorgeous room. I remember very high ceilings. They were atrium type ceilings. So there was glass. And then when you walked in the room, the cop's desk was to your right, and to your left was this little glass enclosed room that had microwaves, very, very small. For such a big visiting room, it was very small, the glass enclosed room. And it had microwaves, and it had vending machines, just a couple little ones with the stuff that turned on the turnstile things. And then outside of that room was the women's bathroom for the visitors, the men's bathroom for the visitors, and they were like school bathrooms, stalls. The women's bathroom, at least, obviously I've never seen the men's, but they were like stalls. They were decent, they were clean, they were fine. And then along the back wall was the attorney visit rooms, and in the back corner was the room where the guys would get buzzed out after they were changed out and come in. And the tables and chairs were set up kind of like 1970s waiting room chairs at the doctor's office, maybe, where they were those chairs with metal rims. So the bottom was like a half of a rectangle piping made out of metal, and then the seat that you sat on and the backrest behind you was plastic. I don't remember what color they were. Was this the place where the visitors' chairs were one color and the inmates' chairs were another color? I think that was there. I think that the visitors' chairs were blue and the inmate chairs were maybe tan. I think that's how it was. And they were square tables, and there was a chair on each corner of the table. There were 4 chairs to a table. And you were not allowed to touch each other at all, except for one hug hello and one kiss hello. You couldn't, I don't even think that you could touch feet under the table, because I think the tables, were they solid? I don't remember. But I don't remember being able to touch, like, play footsies or anything like that under the table. And I just remember it being an enormous room. One time I went on Labor Day, some federal holiday that a lot of people don't get off of work, and I was the one and only visitor that day. And we were all the way in the back corner of the room, and it was huge. It felt like the cops were miles and miles away, although they weren't. So that was Allenwood, and then that was at the high security level facility, similar to what you saw in, I think, the Clint Eastwood movie. And then at the medium security level, now this institution is older. So here you just drive up onto the property. The parking lot is a flight of stairs up above. So you walk down the flight of stairs, you walk into the front door of this facility, and there's a, like a decent sized front room. The cop's desk is not set up. The cop's desk is directly in front of you. But when you walk in the front door, immediately to your left, there is a little glass enclosed room with couches all around it. And that's where and a table type thing in the middle. And that's where you fill out your paperwork. You wait to be called. And then outside of that room is a visitor's bathroom. And then in front of that visitor's bathroom, it's unisex. It's one at a time. There's a storage closet right in front of that, which really is a storage closet because I've seen it open before. So once you're processed through the metal detector and the scanner right there, in this facility, there's a little waiting area, and then you have to be buzzed into, there's no bars, just a door. So the cop has to call from the back desk, door 1, And so you could hear it click, a big click, a buzz and a click, and then you're in this little glass enclosed, I guess it's a foyer room, but it's going to let you outside. And so you have to show you got a black light sticker. You have to show your hand under the black light so they could see that you are a visitor that's there. One time somebody told me when I first started going there that if that washes off, you're stuck, you're not allowed out of the facility. And for a second I was like, oh, don't wash my hands. I go to the bathroom so much. What am I going to do? But they were lying. So anyway, you show your black light. Everybody shows their sticker. Everybody's confirmed to go in. Door 4, the cop says, buzz. It's opened up. You walk about 50 yards outside on a cement path with grass around you. You see fencing, but it's not scary. And you could see up onto the yard. And then on this side, you could see just like this little weird grassy area that goes up by the housing units, but nobody's allowed out there because that's towards the front. So I don't know what that's there for. But you go into a back building and you see this place is very institutional but old looking. So directly to your left is the visiting room. In this visiting room, it's like a small little hallway, and on either side of you are hooks for the visitors to hang our jackets or sweatshirts or anything you're not allowed to wear during visit, like a scarf, anything like that. And then immediately to your left is the male visitor bathroom, the female visitor bathroom, and then this little glass enclosed room that now they have the vending machines and microwaves for you to get your food. And then on the right, when you walk in this room, is the cop's desk that is also a semicircle. And then when you look out into the room, the chairs they were just recently redone. They used to be kind of lined up like church pews, and they were those old, like, it looked like adult-sized Fisher-priced plastic chairs. They were all purple. And just like those all-the-way plastic chairs with 4 legs, not very comfortable, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I could put a picture up there. All the chairs were lined up facing the front, and then all the chairs on this side were lined up facing the front with kind of a walkway in between. And attorneys' offices were on this side, and it used to be the vending machines were back there, and that used to be a kid's room, but now it's different. They've changed it where they got these plastic chairs. They're all gray, and the bottom has this metal piece. All of the chairs are attached to one another on one side. So there's 3 or 4 chairs that are attached. Then you have this big block of wood, just a rectangle block of wood, thick. That's really heavy, actually. It's hard for me to even push it with my feet. That's in between. And then the other set of stairs is facing. So all of the inmates on one side of the room, the back of the room, have to face forward. And the visitors have to face the inmates. And on the opposite side of the room, all of the inmates have to face the opposite way. They have to face forward. And all the visitors are facing towards the back of the room. And they're kind of scattered weird. They're like angled throughout the room. Some are straight, some are angled, all throughout the room. You used to, when these chairs were next to each other, you could touch each other, you could hold hands, you could lean your head on each other. And then when they changed it, you could still sit forward, you could hold hands, you could kind of rub each other's leg tastefully. But since the last time I was there, you're not allowed to touch at all. So that's kind of an older school. I don't know if that's a newer or an old school visiting room, but it's very similar to what you said you saw on TV. But unless I see what you're seeing, I don't know how accurate it is. But I think it's a really, really, really amazing topic and a great idea for future videos. If you guys have seen visiting rooms in movies and TV shows and you comment below, then I will get footage and I'll tell you if that's legit or if it's something that needs to be debunked. Or it doesn't have to be visit room, anything about prison. So that's it. My phone's about to die. You guys keep staying strong, keep loving strong, keep supporting one another through this journey because you're one day closer to it all being behind you. Lots of love from my heart to all of yours. I will see you beautiful ladies and gentlemen in the next one, and stay safe and don't do anything silly at your visits. It's going to get you in trouble because we look forward to them more than anything else in this whole entire world. Whether they're on a phone, behind glass, contact, no contact, extended family visits, which I'm so jealous of, but you go, everybody that has those, no matter what they are, we treasure them and live for them. So try not to lose them. I love you guys. Bye.